Okay, thank you all. Can you all hear me? Is this volume level okay? Perfect, thank you, yeah? So a huge thanks for this opportunity to talk to you this evening. My name's Dave Barwick and I'm a volunteer for Scotland's Charity Air Ambulance, otherwise known as SCAR. I'm not quite sure who had the brilliant idea to create a medical charity and call it SCAR, but it was a classic piece of programming, wasn't it, sort of, yeah? So I intend to spend about 15 minutes chatting to you today through some slides to try and just describe who SCAR is, what we do and how we operate, etc. sort of thing, yeah? It's very informal. It's unusual for us to use the Zoom video format, so it's an experiment for us as well. So your feedback would be very, very welcome, sort of thing, yeah? So let's see how we get on. So I'm just going to bring up the presentation. So I need to share my screen with you, yeah? Are you seeing my screen?
Not yet, Dave.
Not yet, okay. So, I need to share screen. This we try.
We can see it. It's coming, I think.
All right, okay. We tried this just before we started.
Yeah.
Can anybody see the PowerPoint slide now? Yeah?
Yes.
Perfect, excellent, thank you. So about 15 minutes, and I won't drag it on any longer than that because fatigue can set in on these kind of conversations, but it should give you a general idea about Scotland's charity air ambulance. Okay? So this is what we do. So that was Golf Scar, our Helimed 76, a helicopter which is based in Perth, not far from yourself, etc. sort of thing, yeah? And SCAR is part of what we call the UK Helicopter Emergency Medical Services, HEMS, yeah? And this is a group of helicopter aviation services which exists all the way throughout the UK, provided by 21 air ambulance charities, and we operate 40 aircraft between ourselves, yeah? We're all modelled on essentially the same plan, if you like, sort of thing, yes? But in fact, if you look at the graphic on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see that there are far more helicopters that are based in England, Wales and Northern Ireland than the 4 helicopters that we have in Scotland, yeah? But the model between England and Scotland is quite different, that of the 4 helicopters flying as part of HEMS, 2 are provided by the NHS and 2 are provided by us, by SCAR. So this charity provides 50% of the helicopter HEMS service in Scotland, yeah? That's quite different to England, Wales and Northern Ireland, where there are no NHS or government funded helicopters. They're all provided by charities, by the 21 other air ambulance charities throughout England, Wales and Northern Ireland, yeah? So in fact Scotland's quite lucky and has always been very forward thinking about having an aviation service, providing a medical service. And that's why ever since the 60s there's been these 2 helicopters provided by the Scottish Ambulance Service. They also have 2 fixed wing, and then as I say we provide another 2 helicopters, one based in Perth and one based in Aberdeen, that we'll talk about in a little while, yeah? But you can see that we are Scotland's only charity funded air ambulance service, and as I've mentioned we provide us 50% of the coverage of the air ambulance, yeah? So what do we provide? Well, we have this strap line of saving time, saving lives in Scotland, yeah? And it really says it all, that the very reason for using a helicopter-based service is it saves time and ultimately saves lives, in Scotland, yeah? It's a Scottish charity serving the people of Scotland, yeah? We always used to talk about this concept of the golden hour, of somebody that's injured getting into them within 60 minutes, within the golden hour, yeah? To save either their life or to stop them having life-changing injuries. The medical people now tell us it's down to 40 minutes, yeah? But it's all about getting a rapid intervention, getting the paramedics in to stabilise the patient, and then getting the patient back to hospital, yeah? We do operate 365 days a year, and we operate 12 hours a day, yeah? We generally operate in daylight hours. Our pilots are night rated, but simply we don't normally put down in the countryside in an unlit location at night, etc. There are exceptions to that, but generally we are a daylight service, if you like, yeah? So we have one helicopter and one rapid response vehicle, and you can see that there on the picture, based in Perth. And that's the situation we had from the start until the beginning of this year, when we added a second helicopter and rapid response vehicle, the helicopter being HeliMed 79, and now that's based in Aberdeen, etc. Yeah. You can see there from the top picture, we have a full crew of 6 paramedics, so we have 3 on shift at any time, and 2 pilots, so we have 1 pilot on shift at any time, yeah? The way we're organised is that we have a charity team of 12 staff at the moment. It's a very small staff corps which looks after the administration and the running of the charity, etc. But it's very interesting to have a look at how we structure ourselves operationally, yeah? And there's a key message that I want to try and get across here, and I hope I don't stress it too much, but I think it is core. We are not a private ambulance service, yeah? We're part of the NHS, we're part of the Scottish Ambulance Service, and we're incredibly proud of that, yeah? So for instance, the way we're organised is our paramedics, the guys there and the ladies that you can see in the orange boiler suits, they're staff, Scottish Ambulance Service people, yes? They're not our employees, they're employed by the Scottish Ambulance Service. What happens though is they're seconded to us, and then the charity picks up the tab for their salaries, essentially, yeah? But they operate to Scottish Ambulance Service standards, they work to procedures put down by the Scottish Ambulance Service. Our hangars in Perth and in Aberdeen are essentially Scottish Ambulance Service bases, etc. Yes? So we're not like some adjunct or private entity that's trying to provide an extra helicopter service. We're an integral part of the NHS and Scottish Ambulance Service, and that's very important to us, yeah? The other important people inside our arrangement are Babcock Mission Critical Services, previously known as Bond helicopters until a few years ago, yes? And they provide the pilots, they provide the aircraft, they provide all the aviation expertise, they provide the aviation spares, etc. So anything to do with flying, yes, is provided by Babcock Mission Critical Services, yeah? So the way that we're structured is we have this small charity team that generates enough cash to make the experts sit in the right locations, if you like, yeah? So we have the paramedics who are superb at the medical paramedic side, are provided by the Scottish Ambulance Service, and then we have the pilots who are extremely professional people who belong to Babcock Mission Critical Services, etc. So we essentially subcontract out these two services, yeah? How do we help the people of Scotland? Well, we are a national charity. We're a registered Scottish national charity, and we fly across Scotland. So our delivery mechanism is to the people of Scotland. We're funded by the people of Scotland, we're registered as Scottish charity, and we provide a service to the people of Scotland, yeah? And our aim, if you like, is to reach over 90% of the population of Scotland within 20 minutes flight time, etc. That's the reach that we have, yeah? We've talked previously about we respond to time-critical emergencies. We'd only be called off if the emergency is time-critical. There's no point in using us if using time criticality doesn't give a benefit to the patient, etc. sort of thing, you know? Yeah. We also provide a lifeline to remote and rural communities. Some of the communities we serve, particularly on the West Coast, wouldn't be viable. They don't have an ambulance service available to them through conventional means. And the only way that they become viable is by having access to medical services provided by people like ourselves. And remember, in this frame, I'm talking about not just SCAR, because SCAR have these 2 helicopters. The Scottish Ambulance Service also have 2 helicopters, so jointly we provide this service between us, yeah? So we deliver on scene expert paramedic care to patients. And again, I want to stress that it's that first intervention of getting an experienced paramedic on the ground to stabilise the patient, which may make all the difference between life or death. It doesn't necessarily mean that the person will be taken to hospital by air ambulance. It's that first intervention which is critical, etc. And the person may well go by helicopter, but equally by then a land ambulance may have arrived to take the person to a place of care. Yeah. And then also we do transfer patients rapidly to specialist hospitals. And it's a bit of a throwaway line, but it's one of the unique capabilities of an ambulance service that in Scotland we're never more than about 20 minutes away from anywhere. All the major medical centres are within a 20-minute region by flight time. I mean, these things are doing 135 mile an hour, sort of, you know, in a straight line. Yeah. So what that tends to mean is we can pick up a patient and take them to the hospital which is most relevant for the care that they need. And that could be a neuro injury, it could be a stroke, you know, it could be a baby, etc. Each hospital has a slightly different specialism, if you like, yes? And traditionally the land ambulance would take you directly to the closest one. It makes perfect sense, yeah? But with an air ambulance being so flexible in its location, it can take the patient directly to the most relevant hospital, to the most relevant trauma centre to get the best level of care. And that's something sort of unique that the air ambulance can do because we are so fast, if you like, yeah? Yeah. So just to give you an example, and there's a picture there of HeliMed 76 flying past Stirling, yeah? Just to give you an idea of how much time was saved. So if we go from Bala to Royal Infirmary, 65 minutes in a land ambulance, it's 15 minutes in the helicopter, yeah? Huntly to Aberdeen Royal Infirmary, 54 minutes, it's only 14 minutes by air, yeah? Arran to Crosshouse in Inverness, yeah, 127 minutes, yeah? And ferry times are on top of this, etc. sort of thing, yeah? Then 127 minutes by land ambulance and only 15 minutes by air ambulance. So you can see the time saved is critical. And of course, as I mentioned before, it's not just the fact that that's the time to get the patient to hospital. That's how long it takes us to put that first intervention in, to get the patient stabilised, to give them the best chance of recovery, yeah? I'll just pause there. Everybody okay? Everybody hearing properly? Yeah? Perfect. Very good, yeah? So, how is SCAR tasked? We include this slide to again push home the point that we're not some add-on private ambulance service. We are an integral part of the NHS and proud of it. So, a 999 call is made by any one of you, which goes through to the normal ambulance desk, etc. sort of thing, yeah? And as soon as it's identified that the call would benefit from having air ambulance support, then it's forwarded on to what they call the HEMS desk, the Helicopter Emergency Medical Service desk, which has access to the 4 helicopters that are available in Scotland, etc. sort of thing, yeah? So that HEMS dispatcher, who's a member of the Scottish Ambulance Service, yeah, will decide whether to call us off or to not call us off. We have no control over that. We don't cherry pick jobs, we're told which jobs to go on, yeah? And you can imagine that using an air ambulance service, these calls tend to be the most challenging calls, etc. sort of thing, by their very nature. That's why you would want to use the air ambulance, yeah? What happens is the Scottish Ambulance Service HEMS dispatcher then calls us. We have a fancy Scottish Ambulance Service communication system and you can see there's a white sort of laptop-y type thing there. That's how we get the primary call, which gives us the grid reference, it gives us the medical details of the patients that are known, etc. And then finally we take off typically within 5 minutes of first getting the call, a maximum of 5 minutes, yeah? We use Eurocopter EC135s, which are very fancy and very instrumentated. They're rated for single pilot operation, so all of the pre-start checks that we would laboriously have to work through are all typically done on the computer. Everything's very automated, just to try and keep the takeoff time to the lowest that we can possibly make it. Yeah? So, teamwork at the scene, and you can see on the top right corner there, there's a wee picture of us sitting amongst the rest of the emergency services, and we've got the nice fancy coloured helicopter there, but we are just a small part of the overall emergency services that operate within Scotland. As I've mentioned, we are part of the Scottish Ambulance Service. We work closely with Police Scotland. We're very much involved with the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, the Coast Guard, etc., to mountain rescue. Right down to the bottom, you can see there Aberdeen, Edinburgh, Glasgow and Tayside are trauma centres, so the hospitals are trauma centres, and that's where we work closely with all of those people. And the graphic there, you can see there's a picture there of the A90, yeah, where there was a road accident, and again you can see there's a land ambulance there, we're there, the fire service are there, the police are there, etc. We're just another member of the emergency services in Scotland, and we're all there to make sure that the person gets the best possible care that they can need at the right time, etc. sort of, yeah. So no showboating, no specialist services. We're just a part of a wonderful organisation that we've been incidentally clapping every Thursday, which has been really heartening, yeah? So, what have we been doing so far? Well, we've been operating for just 6 years now, and we've carried out 2,400 time-critical call-offs, with 2,400 calls so far. With last year, we attended 352 emergencies, just slightly less than one a day, which is our regular call level, but of course that was for just having one helicopter, HeliMed 76, and now we've added HeliMed 79, so that number hopefully will double, yeah? But you can see we have a large proportion of trauma. Trauma has been injury in the field, if you like, so we've had people falling off horses, people falling off roofs, we've had people falling under tractors, we've had people being kicked by horses and cattle, etc. sort of thing, yeah? 17% cardiac emergencies, as it describes, heart failures and such like. 15% medical emergencies, yeah? Medical emergencies dominated by road traffic accidents, unfortunately, sort of thing, yeah? So you can see that that's the general sort of breakdown. And I've just added there a slight rider on there that so far this year we've done 136 missions, yeah? Including 18 where we've gone into Montrose and the Basin, 10 in the Forfar area, 46 in Pitlochry, etc. So we operate very locally to where you are, yes, yep. The furthest north we've been so far is to Orkney, yeah. But generally we tend to operate mainly on the Scottish mainland, simply because Orkney and the Shetlands are served by fixed wing air ambulance services, which can get there faster than we can, if you like, sort of thing, yeah? So how do we keep SCAR flying? I mean, how do we keep this in the air? Well, the answer is with money, with a lot of it, yeah? Every time we carry out a mission, every time we take off from the helipad, it costs us roughly £2,500, yeah? A significant amount of money. And you can see there, we've given some examples of where we spend the money on heat packs, £50 to buy a traction splint. One number that does line this up for me, I was at a show last summer, and a farmer came up to me and he pressed £100 in my hand, yeah? And he said, how many lives can you save with that £100? And I said, well, I promise you, absolutely promise you, we can save lives with that £100. But the reality is that £100 keeps us in the air for 6 minutes, just 6 minutes, yeah? Helicopters are fantastically expensive, so £100 buys us about 6 minutes of fuel when in the air, etc. Yeah. So, the new story for this year is HeliMed 79, and this is the new helicopter we've just added to the fleet. Bearing in mind that adding that new helicopter required us to raise £6.5 million, etc., which is a lot of money for any kind of charity to raise, but £6.5 million to put HeliMed 79 in place. And it's now based in Dice. Following recommendations by the Scottish Ambulance Service, they thought that the Grampian area required better coverage, and of course by providing the charity air ambulance helicopters, it takes the pressure off the NHS Scottish Ambulance Service helicopters. Yeah, we're working again with Babcock Mission Critical Services, and in fact Babcock provide all of the helicopters for all of the HEMS services in England, Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland. It's a single contractor that provides a single service, so we all get a much better deal, and we're all able to share spares, share pilots, share expertise, etc. So by having Babcock Mission Critical Service at the centre of it, it just means we get economies of scale. Yeah? So we have 2 pilots and 6 paramedics, just exactly the same as in Perth, who are now based here in Aberdeen. And the Aberdeen helicopter is HeliMed 79, and the call sign of the existing helicopter is HeliMed 76. All of the helicopters we talked about previously have one of these HeliMed call signs. That's how we reference ourselves, yeah? And we're fully integrated into Scotland's 909 emergency network, just as we've touched on earlier, yeah? So without going through every single line of the impact of HeliMed 79, and it's increased our resilience and response capability times. Obviously, with more helicopters closer to the people, we can provide a better service, yeah? It's also directly fed into the Scottish Trauma Network. You remember I talked about the hospitals in Aberdeen, Dundee, etc., etc., are designated as trauma network hospitals, etc. So we help them meet their time priorities, etc., sort of thing, yeah? There are risks associated with key industries in the area, such as farming, agriculture and petroleum. So you can see the strap line at the bottom. It allows SCAR to deliver more care more quickly to more people across Scotland. Yeah. So we think HeliMed 79 is making a real contribution to the people of Scotland, as we hoped it would, but bearing in mind it's cost us £6.5 million to put it in place. Yeah. And then we like to show you a nice graphic there, a nice picture of HeliMed 79 G-SCAR, and you can see that it's got its own tartan on the tail, etc. That's SCAR's own tartan, etc. And we have some very notable sponsors such as SSE, the Clydesdale Bank. There are several people that provide institutional funding, but the reality is we need to raise £4 million every year to keep this aircraft in the sky, etc. Yeah? And that's quite some challenge for a charity, especially in the terms of lockdown, etc. sort of thing. You know, it's everybody's got a lot of priorities, and everybody has a very noble charity that they want to support. We need to raise £4 million a year to keep these 2 helicopters in the air. Yeah. So we're down to the last couple of slides, and I'll be able to shut up and leave you in peace. Yeah. But we would make a plea to you, yeah, that there are ways to help us. There are ways to help SCAR. Yeah. All of these methods are in the website that you'll see coming up at the end of this presentation. But for instance, each Tuesday you could win up to £1,000 by taking part in our weekly lottery. So £1 a go, and you could win up to £1,000, etc. So some very generous people, just if they do win, turn the £1,000 round and give it straight back to us, etc., which is extremely nice of them. Yeah. You could hold a fundraising event at home, work, or in your community, sort of thing. You could get sponsored for one of our events. We do sponsorship type events. For instance, one of our large ones each year is to abseil off the fourth bridge, etc. So that goes down very well and raises a lot of money for us. You could be a one-off or regular donor to our charity. You could even leave a gift in your will, which is becoming quite a significant part of any charity's funding at the moment, sort of thing, by will giving, etc. And equally, you could donate through payroll giving, and then you have the advantage of tax breaks, which effectively means it doesn't cost you any more, but we get the tax back on the deal. So it makes it very economic for us. Yeah? There are other ways, though, that if you people or you know any people that would be interested in being part of us, we're always looking for new volunteers. Yeah, we thrive because we have a wide base of volunteers. You know, this is a Scottish charity provided for Scotland by the people of Scotland, etc. Yeah, and as a volunteer, you could do exactly like I'm doing now. You could speak on behalf of SCAR. I, before the lockdown, used to do about 2 of these a week, sort of thing, in various venues throughout Scotland, etc. But you could certainly speak on behalf of SCAR. You could marshal at an event, and you can see from the wee photograph there, we tend to provide transport services for the Scottish Agricultural Show at Ingliston, the Garden Show, etc. So we make ourselves visible at many of these major fairs. Yeah, you could coordinate collecting cans. We have an agreement with Homebase here in Scotland, where we have a collection tin on each of their tills, etc. Sort of, you know. So those clan tins need emptying and collecting every month, and there are 240 stores now throughout Scotland. So we're always looking for people to help us collect the cans and bank the money for us. Or equally, you could help in the office with general admin duties. So becoming a volunteer is a very worthy thing that I would recommend anybody thinks about if they have time or know of anybody that has time on the hands. Yeah. But equally good is to spread the word about the Scotland's Charity Air Ambulance. If every one of you talk to family, friends and colleagues about the work we do, it helps us to get our name out there and gets our cause known, if you like, sort of thing. Yeah. Equally, you could consider SCAR when selecting charity partners or causes in any organisations. You can follow us on social media. We're very active on social media for those people who are technically savvy. And equally, you could let us know of any groups who'd like to hear the SCAR story. This wee presentation I'm giving now, as I say, I do 2 a week, and typically it's word of mouth that play groups want to get involved, church groups, Cub Scout groups, other Rotary groups, Inner Wheel, yeah, all sorts of people could have this presentation given to them if they contact us. We're more than welcome to come out and tell the story, etc. Yeah. So here we are on the very last slide. I promised I'd keep it to 15 minutes. Yeah. We are very active on social media. You can see we have Twitter, we have Facebook, we have Instagram. But probably the most source of information we've got there is on our website, which is www.scar.org.uk, which is our main charity page. And everything I've said to you this evening is relayed on that, and ways of getting involved to work along with the charity. So I mean, with that, I'll finish there, etc. Just hopefully you've picked up what we are, what we do, the challenges that face us in the future, and they've never been so acute as because of the virus and the lockdown, and the fact that our primary funding mechanism, you know, through events has now drastically declined, etc. We would certainly welcome any help from anybody out there, but we're just proud to be doing something for Scotland's people, by Scotland's people, but incredibly proud to be part of the wonderful organisation known as the NHS. So I'll finish it there. Thank you. Yeah.
Dave, do you want to stop sharing? Oh yes, it's easier that way, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, that was a really interesting presentation. Lots of information, and you obviously provide a fantastic service. It's not one that I want to use particularly, but it's good to know that you're available if I do need it. So I'm sure there must be a few questions. Philip, yeah?
Yes, just a quick question about really the last few months. Have there been any particular challenges during the epidemic that we might not have thought of that would apply to running such a service? And have there been more or fewer call-offs during that time?
That's the great questions. To answer the first one, yes, it's been incredibly challenging on many fronts. Firstly, we launched HeliMed 79 basically on exactly the same week that we all got locked down. Yeah. So just physically trying to set up a new service in a new hangar with a new crew, with a new helicopter, trying to observe the very early social distancing requirements, etc., just to physically get the service up and running, was a huge challenge. Yeah. The second challenge being that we wanted to use that as a springboard in the Grampian area to promote our service and to promote the knowledge of ourselves, just at the very time that we couldn't do it. Everything got locked down. So we had literally a week's road show organised to go throughout the Grampian region and try and raise the word, and couldn't do any of it whatsoever. It must have been the quietest celebration launch of any charity that's ever happened. Yeah. And then of course the other major challenge, as I've touched on, is our essential funding and communication method, which is events, if you like, yes, has stopped dead, sort of thing, you know. So it gives us some pretty big constraints, etc., with making sure we raise that £4 million to keep the charity in the area. Yeah. As for the calls, yes, we're finding straight away that the service is very heavily used, etc. Yeah, and basically that was because of the COVID virus, because people have gone into critical care much faster than they would have previously done, etc. Sort of, yeah. So that's meant that the service has been heavily used, but of course then you've got the problem that our crews then are much more exposed themselves, and we only have 6 paramedics per location plus 2 pilots. So of course if they end up being into quarantine, then it knocks a large hole in our service. It hasn't happened so far, yeah, but these are the kind of constraints that anybody in the NHS is working at the moment, sort of thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else? James?
Just a slight observation. I see James is there looking at us, and he actually, I think, was the first fundraiser to come to a Rotary Club to speak to raise funds for the air ambulance, and Kirrie was the first Rotary Club to support the air ambulance, and that would have been 6 years ago.
That's wonderful to hear that history. Wonderful, thank you. Yeah.
Anybody else? Yeah, Jim?
Word about that. So, David, I had the honour of being a volunteer talker for the air ambulance way back when it started in 2014, and I had the opportunity to come to the Kirrie Club and bring with me Gavin Davey, who was the CEO at the time, and it was a particularly memorable talk because we went to the Crumbs Hotel to have lunch and then to give the talk. And as I walked in, I'm also a member of the Forfa Club, so I know how the protocol works at the clubs, and you come in and you register, and there was somebody there saying, and very welcome, and what is it that you'd like for your lunch? We have steak and chips, scampi and chips, a whole array of different things. I said, well, this is fantastic. I don't know if we get this kind of menu at the Forfa Club. Anyway, I chose steak and chips. And anyway, sat down. 5 minutes later, my food was delivered to me. I actually happened to be sitting next to Bob Harley at the time. And I was presented with a plate of sandwiches and was told that it was a famine lunch. something which we'd never come across. So I found it ironic that here I am again, some 60 years later, enjoying the hospitality of the Kirriemuir Rotary Club, and I've had to have a sandwich in the kitchen this evening. Thank you very much for having us. And it's great to see that the charity has gone such a long way since 2014, when Gavin and I came and presented to you and showed you the Bulco 105 helicopter. And now there we are, due to the generosity of so many clubs like yourselves and Forfa and just so many people across Scotland, there we are with 2 very snazzy EC135s. So thank you very much again for hearing us and supporting us. Thank you.
Thanks, James. Jim Grant, did you want to ask a question?
Just wondering, you know, £4 million a year to run your organisation, and you know, you indicated that you do get quite a lot of corporate donations. You know, percentage-wise, how much of that income, annual income, comes from the corporate sector, and how much of it comes from other charitable organisations or people raising money for it?
That's another great question. The simple answer is about 60-40 in favour of corporate funding. Yeah, that figure's slightly skewed because we did very well out of the LIBOR fund, and I don't know if anybody remembers that when the banks misbehave themselves, they get fined through the LIBOR fund. It was named after the LIBOR market fixing scandal, etc., sort of thing. Yes. So we've been very lucky in the past to be awarded £6.5 million from that fund, which kept us going for quite a large proportion of time, sort of thing. But obviously skewed the numbers slightly in the 60-40 direction, etc. Yeah. But £4 million a year, which last year was only £2.5 million a year because we only had one helicopter. Yes. Now we're up to £4 million a year, etc. And we always want to do more. Who knows? There could be a third helicopter on the way.
Yeah.
But it really comes down to the logistics of how you physically make enough contact with both corporations and people to raise that kind of money to keep the charity running. Yes. We were very happy about a fortnight ago to get quite a large lump of funding from the government's lockdown funding scheme, etc., sort of thing, which has made a big difference to us, sort of thing. Yeah. But although we're talking here about money, and of course money is important, but we like to try and make sure we are accessible to the people of Scotland, or we're providing the service for them. So it really does hurt us that when we can't get to events and we can't see people face to face and see them in the eye, etc., sort of thing. Yeah. That means that we validate our own service, if you like, but it also means that we keep more relevant, if you like, to the people of Scotland, etc., sort of. Yeah. So yeah, money is important, but publicity and word of mouth about what we are and how we do it and how you can help us is equally a hugely important thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Dave, you spoke about being part of all the other emergency services in Scotland. How do you differentiate with the mountain rescue as to what is an RAF helicopter event and what is an SCAA helicopter event?
All right. Okay. Another great question. Yes. Fundamentally, we don't, because we're tasked from the Hems Dispatch Desk, which is part of the Scottish Ambulance Service. Yeah. So we're just told to go from A to B. Yes, and we do that sort of thing. Yeah. Generally, the way it works in Scotland is anything with an offshore element or a mountainous element, yeah, will be done by either the Coast Guard or Mountain Rescue, etc., sort of thing, with us as a reserve. So, for instance, we wouldn't go out to an oil platform to retrieve a person from an oil platform. Yes, yeah. We basically go wherever the Scottish Ambulance Service goes. It's just that instead of using the land ambulances, which is the main tool, if you like, of the Scottish Ambulance Service, we use a helicopter just because it's more efficient and it provides a better service for the people, sort of thing. Yeah. But as I say, maybe I've overcooked it a little bit, but it's just this critical part that people don't see us as some kind of add-on private ambulance service. We're part of the NHS and incredibly proud to be part of the NHS. Yeah, and that's where we fit in the organisation of emergency services in Scotland. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Neil, President Neil.
Yes, Robert.
Can I ask Robert Murdoch? Can I ask David? David, do I take it that you just serve mainland Scotland, not the islands?
No, we serve all of Scotland. We had a helicopter up in the Orkneys only last week. Yes.
All right.
What it simply means, though, is that if we dispatch, well, two reasons. If we dispatch a helicopter, and remember, we're not doing the dispatching, it's done by the ambulance service, yeah? If a helicopter goes up to Orkneys or Shetland, yeah, which is quite within their capability, it's just such a long way out of the main population centres, that resource is then lost to the rest of Scotland, if you like.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So there's a logistics thing that you have 4 helicopters that you need to cover 4.5–5 million people in Scotland. Where do you locate them best to provide that service, sort of thing? Yeah, yeah. And equally, for the islands, particularly Shetlands, there are 2 fixed wing air ambulance service aircraft who do the retrieve.
Has Dave Barwick frozen?
Yeah.
Will I phone him?
I think we've lost them.